separación niños de padres, casos de violencia, traumas con los indocumentados, cómo resistir ante tiempos de pandemias. Llámanos en vivo al 1-888-900-2811, extensión 6, y haz tus propias preguntas al aire. ¡Comenzamos!
Okay. Hello, good evening, my dear Tribuna TV viewers. Buenas noches, queridos televidentes del famosísimo show de Tribuna TV. Ya están acostumbrados a lo que digo cada show. I'm sure that you'll recognize that I tend to start the shows this way. At any rate, here we are, another month. Last show focused on what I thought was a very important aspect of COVID-19, namely long haul COVID, the symptoms that are very chronic. And I would like to share with the viewers, quisiera dejar saber a los televidentes, that I am planning to do another show, but this one, este en particular, focusing on children and COVID-19, los niños. I'm sure that you are all aware that there is a big emphasis now in having the vaccine at a much lower dose, of course, approved for children as young as 6 months of age. So we're talking, 6 months of age through 4, because we already have 5 through 12. So obviously there are concerns. The government is concerned. Professionals are concerned. Experts are concerned. Children have effects. They're troubled by it. They have physical symptoms, emotional consequences, behavioral consequences. So vamos a enfocar en los niños en otro segmento, another show, probably if not later this month, and hopefully by March. Espero febrero, marzo. So that said, we do have a show that I hope you'll find to be interesting today. It's a show with a very, it's a sad topic because it's something that you see every single day. We're talking about violence, violencia. So es algo que yo pienso que es menester enfocar. We need to focus on this because everywhere you turn, there's violence. To violence here, violence there, violence, all over the place. It's almost as if we have become infected by violence. So the show today, then, it's The Rise of Violence, revisiting the many faces of violence this year, 2022. And I have a wonderful guest. He's someone who is a psychologist. I know him from New York State Psychological Association. We've had many adventures together in and out of NISPA, and he's become formerly a competitor when we both ran for the presidency of New York State Psychological Association. I confess, he beat me. He was president before me, and then I followed in his big shoes. And the following year, they were a little bit hard to fit into those big shoes, but I did the best that I could. He was president in 2015, and I was in 2016. So Dr. Leonard David, I'll introduce you in a moment. He was a guest previously, and I'm delighted to have him back with us today. So that said, I did want to inform the viewers that the show is being recorded. Está siendo grabado actualmente in YouTube. It's being recorded live YouTube. And by tomorrow, it will be accessible on Tribuna TV's website, on Vimeo, and of course on YouTube and other social media telecommunication platforms. So I wanted to let you know as well, dear viewers, that the show, The Rise of Violence, revisiting the many faces of violence this year, it's a huge topic. Undoubtedly, there are many slides, and undoubtedly I gave you far more material in these slides that you can accommodate and show a touch over an hour. It is just too much, but I felt that it was important to make this available to you. So if you take photographs of the slides that are of interest to you, please do. And if not, you can wait for tomorrow when the show is recorded, when you have recordings available and you can take screenshots. Because again, there's a lot of material. We simply will not be able to get to everything. And I did want to at least give you a reasonable exposure to violence 2022, recognizing that there's just so much out there, it's impossible to get to. So that said, I wanted to acknowledge not only my guests, who I'll introduce in a moment, but I wanted to acknowledge my producer, Don Oscar. Oscar, si quieres saludar a los televidentes. He is responsible. He's telling everybody, be careful with the snowstorm. I mean, I'm in New York, and where I live, we had like 23 inches of snow. We're expecting rain, going to freeze over, and I'm pretty sure there's a band of snow working its way across the United States. So for all viewers who have been in some way snowed in, like I certainly hope that you're careful, be very careful not to shovel if you have any medical condition. You don't want to slip and fall, and you certainly don't want to, succumb to a heart attack or something else. So please make sure that, you hire someone to do the shoveling for you if you are in the zone of snow. So Oscar is the producer, and he's responsible for the broadcast and for putting up all the slides. So I'm always grateful to him, as I am to the director, Emilio, and to Ezekiel from El Salvador, who also puts up the program on YouTube and is responsible for the promotion of the show from El Salvador. I keep waiting for pupusas. I don't know. I give up. Maybe I'm just going to have to find a deli near where I live and order them myself. So that said, Don Oscar, por favor, me puede poner el primer slide, the first slide. Okay, so I've already given you the name, The Rise of Violence, Revisiting the Many Faces of Violence this year, 2022. Today, of course, February 3rd. And my guest, Dr. Leonard Davidman. And just by way of a brief promo, intro, violence permeates our lives. I think that's pretty clear. Indeed, there's a wave of violence. It seems that our society is infected by violence. We see violence-related news every day. Turn on any news station any day, and you're going to see something related to violence. Homicide rates have soared nationwide. The list would take pages to fill, probably much more than pages, probably hundreds of pages to fill. The federal government has hate crime laws that include crimes committed on the basis of victims' perceived or actual race, color, religion, national origin, sexual orientation, gender identity, or disability. My guest, Dr. Davidman, and I, were going to examine the rise of violence in various contexts, the impact to society, strategies to help address this nationwide problem, and what I really think is so important, and I'm so hopeful that this is the piece that I can leave most for you, practical tips and recommendations. Like what to look for, how to prepare yourself, how to avoid being a victim or to minimize risk. Tonight's show is dedicated to all viewers and family members and loved ones who have been victimized by violence, hate, and vice crime. And I am sure that there are many. Oscar, por favor, me pone slide 2. I'm going to introduce our guest. So here you see, número 2, here you see Dr. Leonard Davidman. His photo up there, nice smile. Nice suit too, matching tie. You look great in that picture. I don't want to read the entire thing because we'll take half an hour to get to the whole thing. But suffice it to say that he's a practicing psychologist for 50 years. He's a member of the Jurisecurity organization. He's been trained in martial arts. I mean, I think I can have images of him, jumping across, doing all sorts of, karate kinds of maneuvers. He's a leader. He sits on many boards of psychology. He is a president of the Labor Union for Public Sector Psychologists. He is chief psychologist at Metropolitan Hospital in New York City, assistant professor of psychiatry and behavioral sciences in New York Medical College, He also takes care of other psychologists. He's president of the labor union for 27 years. He's worked in 11 New York City public hospitals, New York Police Department, Family Court, Criminal Court, Department of Corrections, past president of Manhattan and New York State Psychological Associations. Like I said, he was president at NISPA in 2015. He was president of the Forensic Psychology Division of New York State Psychological Association. I had the privilege also of being president of that same division. From the Jewish perspective, he's chair of his union's citywide Jewish Heritage Committee, attended Orthodox Jewish schools his entire life. He earned a BA in psychology at Yeshiva University, PhD from Fordham. He studied psychology at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, member of the Modern Orthodox Synagogue in Manhattan. He has earned service awards from Lincoln Square Synagogue, National Jewish Outreach Program, Council of Jewish Organizations and Civil Service. He's evaluated children and teens on inpatient psychiatric units. He actually, we're in for a treat because he'll give us some of his experience in working with them. And he did write an article on homicidal school-age children. What you didn't put here is your Latino background. So, Oscar, por favor, slide, and Lenny, just take it away. Whatever I left out, you can embellish it, add to it. But I think it'd be great if you mention a little bit of your own Hispanic roots and what your wife does.
Let's see. First, good evening, Roy, and thanks for inviting me onto your show. It's an honor to be here. By the way, can you hear me? Can you hear my voice? Is Oscar?
Yeah,
my voice?
Loud and clear.
Okay. My Latino background. See, my mom, who comes from a Russian Jewish family, but they couldn't get into America, so my mom was born in La Argentina. My mom's born in Argentina. My mother's second husband, my stepfather, is Afro-Cuban. My father-in-law was raised in Puerto Rico. My biological father worked in Puerto Rico, and even I worked in Puerto Rico as a waiter when I was in high school at a kosher hotel, the first one there. So, and my wife is an expert in Spanish. She's learning Spanish from all countries and all over the world. She's been all over the world, even in Spain, learning Spanish. And if she's on the show, she's on watching this, hi, Bev. That's my Latino background. I really, and I work in Spanish Harlem. Been working in Spanish Harlem for the last 40 plus years. El Barrio, that's where I work. That's
good food up there. Really good food. I remember the food.
I don't want to bore people with my background. I want to know about violence.
All right, so welcome. I'm going to call you Lenny because that's how I know you. And we have many slides. Again, I'm going to cover them. Some of them, fairly quickly. Again, I encourage the viewers to take snapshots or photos so that you can get the full benefit of the information. It's my intent is to make it educational and to give you tools to empower you, to make you, the viewers, empowered. So if you yourselves are victims or know of people who are in some ways victims of violence, it doesn't necessarily have to be just racially or bias-related hate crimes. Violence is violence, and I certainly want my viewers to be safe and to be aware of it. So there's a lot of good tips that we're going to be covering. So again, some of the slides I'll put up. I'm going to ask Oscar to take them down, and I'll ask Lenny to comment on them. And when we get to the sections that focus more on kinds of preventive measures, where this comes from, why are we seeing this wave of violence, we'll spend a little bit more time just back and forth dialogue between Lenny and me. Don Oscar, por favor, slide number 3. So this covers the many faces of violence. It's not, it doesn't cover everything, but it gives you like really a good intro to many different aspects of violence. Schools, we've seen a prevalence of more violent incidents in schools. Places of worship, a lot, and I hope that Lenny, you might have something to say about the incident in Texas. It was a recent. I'm pretty sure there's already been other incidents since then. Vehicles are used for ramming. We had a horrific a vehicular mass homicide that took place in Wisconsin during a Christmas march that left 6 people injured and many 6 people lost their lives and left many more people injured. Police violence, we know that there are many instances where police are involved in violence, and there are also many incidents where police themselves are victims. We saw that in New York City recently, Massachusetts, and Virginia. And Lenny, you may want to say something about that. Domestic violence and intimate partner violence. We've had guests on this show. We've talked about it on several occasions. I did leave out, although probably you would see it under possibly domestic violence, but not limited to domestic violence, but people who are the victims of sex crimes. So, por favor, puedes sacar a slide. Lenny, I open it up to you for anything.
What do you want me to say about Texas, about the Texas synagogue shooting, not shooting, but the hostage taking? It's very different.
But so close to a shooting.
But let me mention, I told you, and I've said this before, I actually, the Jewish population, the Jewish community, it actually has the largest group of targets. They're the most targeted of hate crimes. And synagogues and Jewish schools and Jewish institutions are targets of terrorists, actually. And so a bunch of I think Australians or people from another country, Jews came to America recently, last bunch of years, and they said, why don't you have security guards by synagogues? What do you mean? This is New York. What do you mean synagogue? What needs security guards? But they started an organization where they actually train volunteers, and I'm one of them, to train them to how to do anti-terrorism work by standing guard in front of the synagogue, and going to the synagogue before it starts, looking for anything suspicious, and being on the lookout for situational awareness, but also learning how to ask people questions. What are they, if they don't know them, what are they doing there? You want volunteers from the synagogues. So if I've done that for many years, and we don't let people in. When I was we were trained in mixed martial arts, Krav Maga. We're also we learn how to do counterterrorism. If people are by a bus stop and they don't go on the bus and just looking at us, we wonder if they're casing the joint. They want to see what kind of security we have. So we are careful about what's going on. So the bottom line is, we don't let people in unless we know who they are, or unless they can answer questions well. I was shocked to learn that, because I was also the chief usher of my synagogue, where I welcome everybody. But in the training, they said, Lenny, you don't know, this is a synagogue and a church. They're private institutions. They're not public. They're private. Most of us keep doors open to let anyone in. That's the past. The synagogue in Texas, there was no security. Although even though the rabbi said he was trained, there was no real security. And he had a stranger come in, and I don't think he was trained. I don't know if he was trained in interrogation like we were. And he let this guy in, and that guy turned out to be the hostage taker. So I hate to be critical, because he was a hero in how he got people out, but it was terrible that he let some guy in that fooled him, that it was some new harm. So that's what I want to say. It sounds critical, and it sounds like against a hero. And he was a hero, but if it was me standing guard, I would not let this guy in. We would not let him in. If we didn't know the person and they couldn't really answer our questions, we would not let them in, no matter how angry they'd get. And that's what I'm going to say.
That's educational criticism. That's very appropriate criticism. We're living in an era. I mean, it's sad when you consider that people want to go to church, and anybody who's religious would want to think I would want to open up my doors and let people come in, and that you actually have to go through screenings and things like that. And training tells you where we're at, because it's so easy to become victimized now. And some of the points that you're making apply, to Christianity, to other religious organizations, and schools.
And churches.
Get into this a little bit later. You can't go leaving every door open in a school. So that, there's a lot that meets the eye, and we'll get a chance to talk about that.
I just want to add one thing, Roy. I want to add about even there was a shooting. Don't forget, a shooting at Jacobi Hospital last week, right? It was at the ER.
Yes.
The hospitals, and we're trained. In our hospital, in all hospitals, we're trained in active shooter. Things like that. We're trained how to barricade ourselves with the patient in the bedroom that they're in. But in the past, there was really people angry about their medical care, angry about insurance. They became active shooters. But now it's a little different. But we have security, but we don't have. People are upset about hospitals now. You can't go any place and you can, as you said in the introduction, you can see violence any place. So
yeah. So let's look at the next slide, because I would be remiss if I didn't let the viewers know what they've probably already been aware of from watching the news, but something hot off the press. Por favor, Oscar, el número 4. Es el...
Number 4. I have this number 4.
Right. So this is, hot off the press, of course. President Joe Biden visited New York City, met with Mayor Eric Adams and Governor Kathy Hochul today, February 3rd, coincidental with during the program. And it was totally related to violence. So I just wanted quickly to share some of the data, some of the information that I got, and I'm identifying the source as Boston Globe. You can look at the statistics. 316 people are shot every day, 106 killed, including 26 children who died in gun violence so far this year. We saw an 11-month-old girl who was wounded by a stray bullet. There are a couple of other incidents that I mentioned there. 32 officers have been shot in the line of duty so far this year. 7 of them have perished. 75% of all homicides in the United States were due to firearm injuries, and guns are responsible for 91% of youth homicides. Okay, I gave you the source. I know that the theme of gun control and the Second Amendment, that they're controversial topics, and I don't really want to entertain a controversial discussion. I'm just pointing out the reality of the statistics. These are statistics, so that I'm relying on the information that I get. There are, in terms of interventions and things that the professionals and law enforcement agents are looking to do, politicians and so forth, violence intervention community groups, in terms of efforts to prevent violence, federal strike forces to really try to corral criminals who are out on the loose, make sure that somehow they are apprehended. There's people that don't show up, they've escaped, they don't show up to court proceedings, they're out. U.S. Marshal Service regularly conducts fugitive sweeps. And in May, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives will host police executives from across the country to collaborate on solutions. So puede sacar el slide.
But before you change the slide, Roy, I want to say something. I actually watched the proceedings, and people can watch it. I recommend people who want this show is interesting to them, they should actually go to YouTube or to the Mayor Adams website and watch the whole interview. It was not just the president. It was the president. It was Congress people. Jerry Nadler from my area was there. The governor was there. Tish James was there.
Yeah, the Attorney General was there too.
Yeah, if you go to Twitter, you'll see the whole room. It's gigantic. You don't see it on the video, but if you go to Twitter, you'll see the room all over the place for people. He's trying to do like a 9/11 thing. Get all the law enforcement, the legal system, the Congress, all the things together. No silos. Share information and have multi-layered plans. And that's what it was really a great conference. But see, the pictures will blow your mind. So yeah, that's important to see.
Do you have? Are you able to provide a suggestion or a tip to the viewers how they would find this?
They can go to it's called New York City Mayor. Google it, NewYorkCityMayor.gov. and you'll have their website, and you'll see their videos, and you'll see this whole thing. Where you go to the White House, actually, I saw the White House website has the whole thing also on their video. If you go to the White House website, or go to YouTube and Google Adams and Biden and the date, you can access it in many ways. I don't have a link to show you online, but if you go to Twitter, you can get links also. But it's worth seeing.
Just going to the search engine and putting in February 3rd.
Biden, Adams.
Right, February 3rd.
Yeah.
The president and mayor and governor of New York, and that probably will open up links to the entire.
It's a 1 hour video. It's a 1 hour meeting. So yeah.
Right. So I wanted to go over a little bit of some formal definitions about hate crimes and background, just to give the viewers also a bit of the sense of prevalence and what's involved. Por favor, Oscar, el número 5. Okay, so here, the FBI, they define hate crime as a violent or property crime such as murder, arson, assault, or vandalism motivated by bias against a race, religion, disability, sexual orientation, ethnicity, gender, or gender identity. The United States Justice Department's Bureau of Justice Statistics, they're estimating approximately 250,000 hate crime victimizations each year since 2004. 9 out of 10 involve violence. In a quarter, the perpetrator had a weapon. About 60% of racial bias is the motivating factor in most hate crimes. National Institute of Justice. Hispanics are facing more violence as immigration and issues pertaining immigration and the whole immigration debacle is heating up. As Lenny mentioned before, there are increased attacks on the Jewish community. Hate crimes in major cities, New York, LA, Chicago, Washington, D.C., are headed for decade highs. And we have the severity and the aggressiveness and the physicality, the damage done has been progressively increasing. Oscar, ¿puedes sacar este slide? Lenny, any add to this, which was more informative?
No, not really. No, I think everyone sees the hate crimes. Again, the Asians are now the target of choice, at least in New York City. In certain neighborhoods, even in the Hasidic neighborhoods in Brooklyn, they had a thing a couple years ago called a knockout game. The thing was among young youth, can they pass by a Hasidic guy and knock him out in one shot? That was called the knockout game. And even you'll see in the news, if people live in New York, see the news, they just go to any place, just beat people up. But that's sort of hate crime, but it's also more like macho. I want to be macho. I'm going to get some weakling, some pale-faced guy, and knock him out. I'm going to be a macho kind of guy and then run away. Hate crimes.
I have a number of targets identified on slide 6. Oscar, por favor, el 6. So here we're looking at race, cultural, anti-African American, anti-Caucasian, anti-Hispanic, anti-Hindu, anti-Native American, Alaska Native, Asian, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander, Asian bias. I suppose I probably left some group out, so apologies.
Anti-psychologists.
Okay. We have sexual orientation, gender bias, anti-female, male, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender bias. I've had shows dealing with victimization of LGBTQ people, and I've had two presenters who covered that in the past with me. Religion, again, anti-Jewish, Muslim, Sikh, Catholic, or other Christian, Protestant, Buddhist, Mormon, Jehovah's Witness, and there's other unspecified religions, including atheist and agnostic bias. Disability bias, I would say this is probably pretty prevalent. anti-mental and physical bias, including bullying, internet bullying, as well as microaggressions and macroaggressions. I have no doubt about it. I mean, I've witnessed it myself on many, many occasions. We can take it down. Anything to add to that, Lenny?
I'm fixing my screen. 1 second. Sorry. Give me 1 second. I can't answer yet. Hold on a second. I'm back. Okay. When I mentioned about the psychologist as a target, that's a different. Actually, one of our members a few years ago on 79th Street, she was killed by a patient who came in. But that's another part of the show tonight. But there was a mentally ill person who came in and actually killed a psychologist, and the psychiatrist was trying to save her, and he was cut up. But that's a whole other forensic issue about mentally ill.
What would be the motivation for violence perpetrated against professionals?
Sometimes it's delusional. Again, that's a whole conversation. I don't know if you want to get into it now.
Well, just briefly, do you have some sense of why they would be targeted? I mean, I can't imagine that it's because the bill was too high.
Well, in my own program now, I'm now in an adult program. A guy came in. I thought he was going to kill me. He wanted some money from us. We do provide in our program. We deal with the chronically ill people. We do provide certain things to them. And this guy wanted some money, where he wanted cards, Metro cards, so he could sell them for drugs. But we knew that, and we had to say no. So he was frustrated, but he didn't get violent, but he was threatening. It was still scary.
So opportunistic would be a big motivator.
But that's, again, it's the whole conversation about violence among mentally ill, and that's and same in homeless. That's a whole other conversation. It's later on tonight, I think. But for this hate crime, I don't have anything more to say.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure that many of our viewers, they may own delis, they may have storefronts, they may be involved in some sort of work where they are exposed outdoors or to the public. So I think it's important as well, not to be victimized. I had one of my patients who worked as a pharmacist at a small local pharmacy, was actually held up and attacked by a drug addicted assailant who demanded all of the medications, like hydrocodone and stuff like that. They know the narcotic kinds of medications.
I remember that case, I think.
And he held her at knife point, and she ended up, really severely traumatized, and she was fairly isolated and abandoned, in the building. So, it's probably good to be aware of this. We're going to talk about this also when we get to being aware of your surroundings when you're outdoors. But I do want the viewers, who are in any way exposed, either by virtue of working or being employed somewhere or being out on the road or out in the field, to be aware of this. We're going to look now at the effects of hate crimes, and then I'm going to ask you to focus on some of your expertise in this area, especially with the adolescents. Oscar, por favor, el número 7. So, victims of violent hate crimes experience more psychological distress than victims of other violent crimes. We have spoken about post-traumatic stress many times on this show, so I'm reasonably sure that it's not an unfamiliar term to my viewers. It's not the only psychological kind of a diagnosis that people might be exposed to. Sometimes if a victim is hit in the head or traumatized or beaten up, they could also have neurological injuries and a post-concussion syndrome, for instance. Safety concerns. They worry about their safety. They feel depressed, anxious. They startle easily. Any sounds, any noise, like a loud honking outside in the street, or somebody banging on the door to deliver FedEx or something else. The phone all of a sudden at 3 a.m. goes up. You're easily startled. Recurrent thoughts and flashbacks, thoughts or whatever recollections you have about the incident. Flashbacks is as if you are reliving it. It's as if this video script is playing in your brain, and it may be more than just visual. You could also have auditory. You can have other senses at play. I've had people who are victims of car accidents, and not only do they have images of the car being in an accident, but they have sounds. They hear the crash and the breaking of the glass and screeching of brakes. So those are flashbacks. Anger, frustrated, loss of self-esteem, loss of interest in activities. Hate crimes let targeted group members know they are not welcome. They're left feeling vulnerable and not safe. So if they target particular neighborhoods with individuals who identify with a particular culture or religion or ethnicity, they may feel, my God, I'm targeted. We're not welcome here. We're not safe. Hate crimes affect other vulnerable groups that may be targeted, and they disrupt the harmony and divide people who live together. So that's it. Well, I got a slide. And Lenny, please give me thoughts on this and whatever.
Can I make a diagnostic statement? I know we have psychologists on here and other people. The term post-traumatic stress, I want to make a distinction between acute stress disorder and post-traumatic stress disorder. Everyone says PTSD. Everyone has PTSD. They don't have PTSD. Most people and I myself, I've been mugged. I've been attacked by a crazy guy on my block, and I had acute stress disorder. It's a normal reaction to an abnormal situation. I also, by the way, treated people in the World Trade Center bombing, the first one where there were survivors, and I was like
93.
Yeah, whatever year it was, I was part of the 75 people trained in New York to deal with those survivors. Anyway,
I was in that also. You may recall.
So there's acute stress disorder. So it's a reaction to acute right away. But PTSD is something that if it lasts more than a certain number of months, then it's a real disorder, which hasn't gone away. But mostly people actually they have resilience. And a lot of the work is about resilience and how to be resilient, how to use your own techniques other than taking drugs, but how to get your strength back after being attacked with some trauma. So it's important to know PTSD is a disorder. Acute stress reaction is not a disorder. It's just it's a normal reaction, and people should know that. Not everyone is. Most people have a good reaction to that. That's important. It's misused all the time.
What about the kids that you work with, the teenagers, that population, and/or adults in the psychiatric?
Again, I'm going to say something that may be controversial. We in terms of even what's going on with the mayor, in terms of in terms of the violence in the city, there's a short-term solution right now, which is more policing and more targeted policing and a proper policing, and then there's long-term, which is about who raises these kids. When I see a news story about these teenagers shot this teenager shot that, I want to know their family, because in my work at my unit, I work with the families and I work with the kids and the families. Sometimes the families, sometimes the parents have mental illness themselves. Sometimes they themselves have criminal behavior. I've had mothers who've stabbed kids and they're in jail and have their daughters. Or I've had guys whose fathers were in jail for murder, and one of the kids, one of my patients went out and eventually murdered someone himself. They said, "Oh, it was self-defense," but we knew he was a murderous kid. There's also when kids have their earphones on and they're hearing rap songs, and the rap songs are very violent. If they have nothing to counteract that, that's what they're learning: violence, being a thug, having money, not treating women properly. I really think that what's missing sometimes is really where are the values. If the whole education is rap music, and it's a problem. So sometimes you need some spirituality in whatever your religion is, something about morality. But again, I work in a poor neighborhood, but they said, "Oh, what's the poverty?" I said, "Well, you know what? If it's poverty, then I have 1,000 kids on my unit. It's not poverty that they hear. The kids out here actually are more vulnerable and they have real psychiatric problems. It's not just societal. They wind up locked in a unit. They have a real mental illness or something that they work with. It's not just poverty. Poverty, of course, is there and is terrible. But you'd have the whole East Harlem and my unit, and it's not there. They're selected.
Lenny, I'd like to add that that for many of these teams, peer pressure, either peer pressure and or identification with peers, is going to be important, wanting to fit in. Social media plays a huge role. The bullying aspect, witnessing it, seeing it, videos that you can see on social media, the complimentary kinds of responses that are given, the bullying. So you'll see some kids who are very vulnerable and they've been bullied, they will retaliate. So these are some important aspects as well that I think need to be taken into account. Also, we're talking about systems, jails, prisons, school settings, hospitals. So systems need to also consider what kind of discharge planning is done for somebody who is a potential risk, either at potential risk for being victimized.
Let me mention about diagnosis,
or being a victimizer. I know that, like at Rikers Island, I mean, I've seen people, because I've worked with them, I've done evaluations on them, where they're discharged, they're given like bus fare and a couple of bucks, and that's it. No follow-up appointments, nothing. The bus is over there, goodbye, have a wonderful life. And there's no follow-ups, no.
But feedback. There actually, you might not know, there actually is, by the way, now. They have social workers on Rikers Island that do discharge planning. I know people that work for them. It's not, but you're right. They drop them off in front of a donut store in Roosevelt Avenue under the elevated train, and they say, "Okay, you're goodbye." But there are organizations like the Fortune Society that tries to help ex-cons. But I want to mention about learning disorders and things. Even the mayor mentions he had a learning disorder. Just imagine this. That we're talking with our language, and we're thinking if something. We have to probably think about it. What should I do? I don't know what to do. Let me discuss myself. Let me have a conversation. There are many kids with language disorders, receptive language, expressive language. They can't use language to discuss the thing in their head. They can't imagine. They're reactive, so they get violent because they can't have the language in order to plan something, to figure out what to do next. And so many times, that's why you have learning disabled kids in gangs. You have learning disabled kids in Rikers. They're not kids anymore, but they have learning problems, and that's one of the issues. Early research with a lot of brain injured people were in Rikers also, or in any prison. So you have people with bad personalities, psychopathic personalities, sociopathic personalities, antisocial personalities, but you have kids that really have learning problems, and they're not treated properly. And then they wind up hanging out and getting in trouble and being impulsive because they can't have the language to figure out what to do next. Treatment work on that.
The antisocial personality disorder, of course, is potentially very serious. Some of the others, like having a learning disability, being behind in academics, having been promoted just because of your age and you don't really have appropriate skills that are necessary. Those are appropriate for some sort of a diversion program, for a therapeutic jurisprudence, identifying the kids who have not been violent, but who in some way have been involved in non-violent, drug-related kinds of offenses. This would also go for older people, not just the adolescents, but diversion programs for people who are non-violent offenders, and not put them in some sort of a correctional facility where they may become more hardened, or they may just be injured themselves, by other inmates.
We have a program here that if someone is really nonviolent, but they get arrested for some minor thing, they wind up actually coming to our hospital, and the charges are dropped. They come in here as a patient, and then we treat them.
That's a diversion program.
But also, I've had teenagers that teach me teenagers that are sociopathic teach me how to mug. They told me where to hit them where to hit someone in the head that they knock them out. one patient told me how they took an Asian store owner, knocked him down, and kicked him in the head until the blood. He said, "I stopped when the blood comes out of his ears. That's when I stopped." Or another kid told me, "I got 5 guys. We see a guy in a suit. We jump him, we knock him down, we take their cell phones, and we run, and that's what we do." That's what he was very proud of, his escapades. These are people with real, serious, sad personality disorders. Very sad.
The next slide, Lenny, is really more for information purposes for any of the viewers for themselves may either have been victimized or they know somebody who has or a loved one. The hate crime laws that are applicable. Por favor, el ocho, Oscar. So I'm just going to go over this quickly. We have, Congress passed the Hate Crime Statistics Act in 1990. We have, it was amended in 1994. It includes bias against persons with disabilities, Church Arson Prevention Act. Congress passed the Shepard-Byrd Act in 2009 to include crimes motivated by victims' actual or perceived gender, sexual orientation, gender identity, or disability. And the FBI, as I mentioned before, they've expanded religious bias category in 2013 to include crimes against Sikhs, Hindus, Arabs, Mormons, Jehovah's Witnesses, and Eastern Orthodox persons. I'm guessing that there probably are other hate crime laws that I didn't post, but this is at least something to whet the appetite, and I do encourage you to be aware of it. Even if you do a search on Google, on the internet for hate crime laws or laws against criminal behavior or laws against bias crimes, it'll certainly open up many links that you can research these kinds of laws that are available for you. Puedes sacar el slide. That was more for information. Do you have anything to add to that, Leonard?
No, I think, one thing about Roy, about your shows, some people are watching your show for the first time. They should go online and see all the recordings of the old shows because Roy really does a fantastic job putting up a lot of information that you can get like a 3-credit course by watching television and watch Roy's shows. I'm serious. They're really fascinating. So if you're new on this station, Google it, go to Roy's, go to the whole archive, see all the shows. You'll learn a lot.
I think this might be my 67th show. I've lost track. I'm not sure. I'm either 66 or 67. I don't quite know. We're going to cover now some risk management in different settings. Okay, so some of this you've already talked a little bit about. So I'm going to put them up briefly, and then we can go into greater detail once I take it down. Oscar, por favor, el 9, slide 9. So here, places of worship, things like setting up a watch program, safety and security team. I think that's something that Lenny alluded to. Monitor and communicate concerns that are provided by people in the community. Contact with local authorities, request surveillance as needed. Invite the local police to come and talk. Information sharing. Keep the police, keep security, keep other individuals, other agencies involved in this. Make sure that you have alarms, panic buttons, if you have them, that they work. Lock the doors not in use when the facility is closed. Limit the number of accessible entrances in the premises, in and out. No floor plans. You have to evacuate. Know the location of emergency and first aid equipment. Be aware of the evacuation plan. Por favor, Oscar, saca eso y pon el 10. Okay, 10 is a continuation. Make sure that you limit cash on premises so that you won't be so much victimized by opportunistic crimes. Safeguard resources, valuables. Make sure that you have smoke detectors, sprinkler system that works. Motion-activated light sensors for the night. Protect windows. They should be working. Properly closed and working. Fencing in good condition, inspected routinely. Area around the establishment well-maintained and free of debris. I mean, I've seen situations where in the backyard or the backyard of the school setting, there's pieces of broken rock and debris and bricks hanging around. I mean, that's ideal to be used as a weapon. Somebody can grab the brick and throw it at a window. I mean, come on, these are potential weapons. Night lights. You should have night lights indoors and outdoors. The shrubs, trees have to be trimmed. Greet worshipers. I believe this is something that Lenny, you didn't mention, but I'm guessing you probably allude to it. And then every now and then conduct drills, and also look for professional development of people who work for you, who are employed for you. I believe that covers it for schools. I mean, for the religious places. What is that kind of slide? Lenny, I know you touched upon this. This is a lot of material to digest. Anything to add to this?
It's a good slide. Also, if you Google that issue, you'll see actually people actually in this, they ask me, people who are churchgoers, they ask me the information that we have, and it's shared. It's for all religious institutions. Again, the world has changed, so therefore it sounds sort of like, how can you do that? But the world has changed, and you have to be careful. So the slide's an excellent slide, Roy. So I have nothing really to add. Just be situational awareness. Situational awareness.
There's a lot of material there. I understand. So, dear viewers, if you're interested in that, please take screenshots.
Well, also, if you see something, really, even that was a catchword. If you see something, say something. Go to the usher of your church. See someone looks strange.
Right, something like it's 80 degrees outside and somebody's wearing like a fur coat, covering up the arms and everything, and why would you be wearing something that warm? so that's the problem. So okay.
My last one. One time there was a girl in my synagogue who was actually cutting her wrists in the middle of services. So actually, it was not a harm to others, but harm to herself. She was cutting her wrist right in the synagogue. So they called me, and I had her brought to Roosevelt Hospital. We called the emergency room, and we called the 911, and they took her. And I had to speak to the resident to make sure they admitted her, which they did. But then they discharged her because they knew her because she was actually a patient of theirs. But it was very scary. But yeah, sometimes it's harm to others also, not just to themselves, not just to others.
The next two slides cover safety in schools. Oscar, por favor, el 11. I'll go over them briefly. Again, I encourage viewers to take screenshots because there's a lot of material there. Okay. Schools external, I mentioned it before, lighting, parking, secure, limited access points, entrances secured, monitored, closed if not used. Cameras. I mean, if you're going to have cameras, they should work. And I certainly would encourage cameras to be used and properly maintained. I already mentioned the environment free of debris, potential hazards, security guards making regular checks in and out, internal safe environment, physical security, areas not accessible to students, safeguarded or locked. Something unrelated to this, but in airports, I've seen areas that says employees only or staff only, and they're not locked. I mean, anybody could open them and walk in. So if you're going to have something that shouldn't be accessible to students, it should be safeguarded locked. Greeting, screening visitors entering the school. Visitors should sign in. They need to go where to go. They have to sign out. Observe them exiting the building. Intervene when an unidentified, unauthorized visitor is on the premises. Here is a good idea to have some sort of an emergency or panic button for whoever's doing the monitoring, so it can be done very quickly and silently. Exits marked, and you want to make sure the lights work. I've gone to movie theaters before the pandemic, and I was amazed when I would see fire exits at the movie theater and the lights are off. I mean, aside from being a violation, they're supposed to be lit. How are you going to, help anybody in the event that there was smoke or something, a problem? If your people watching the movie, they don't see the fire exit. Fire extinguishers visible, accessible, inspected, up to date. Again, I've mentioned camera surveillance in and out, security guards present, visible, in and out. Safety measures. Make sure you have first aid kit supplies. School employees have Red Cross or paramedic training. There should be people who know how to intervene if there's an emergency. Por favor, saca Oscar y ponme el 12. Slide 12 is a continuation of school risk management. Marked evacuation plans. They should be visible. Ongoing supervision of staff. Staff need to have regular training, to protect themselves and the students. Continued school safety professional development, security procedures, response plans for emergencies in place. Every now and then, conducted drills, active shooter drills, lockdown drills, code yellow, code red. These are different types of codes depending on what's being done. Sharing information, collaboration with law enforcement, school districts, community partnering, other regulatory agencies, and context. This is very important. Consider the geography and location of the school, the community context. What are typical or customary security, safety expectations and measures in the school district that you are looking at or interested in? Is what's typical enough? Is typical enough when you are having, say, a major show, or you're having a high-profile guest come to the school? Typical is probably not going to be enough, and you need to enhance security measures on those untypical, atypical, special days that come up from time to time. Consider the situation-specific needs and security enhancements, special events, sporting events, parent-teacher conferences, shows, proms. This relates to what I just said before. Well, let's check out a slide. Lenny, that's... I'm
going to add something to the church and to the school. Two things that are not on your list. Very important. Number one, how do you handle a bomb threat called in by phone? What do you do? And that's on the guidelines that we've trained. So one is to learn about it. I'm not going to tell you what to do, but one is a protocol. What do you do when someone calls and has a bomb threat? What do you ask? There are certain questions to ask them. So that's one thing. And also how to handle mail. If a package comes in and it looks weird, wire sticking out or some strange address, if it looks dangerous, do not open it. Remember the time when they put these chemicals in the envelopes or in packages, the bombers, etc. So the bottom line is train.
Unabomber era.
Unabomber, as well as more recently that the guy was sending stuff to CNN, and I forgot that guy's name. It's one of my slides in my medical student class. I said, who is this guy? You see the bombs, these fake packages sent to CNN and other places. But bomb threats on the phone and mail, and add that to your slides for the future. And there's guidelines online. You can read about what to do.
Okay. So the next slide is something that I think is very relevant to all of our viewers, okay? So I'm going to probably spend a little bit more time on it. Risk management outside. Slide 13. Por favor, Oscar, el 13. So this almost seems a little infantile. You have to know how to get to your destination. I have many patients. They're not accustomed to going places. Right now with COVID, they're not necessarily happy about having to take public transportation. They may want to go by Uber. They may want to walk. But bottom line, you really need to know how to get there. You need to be alert and observant. What does it look like where you are going? What does the street look like when you get off? What does it look like? Are there people? Is there nobody there? Is there debris in the area? Are people hanging out that you don't like the way they look? Alert and observant. Limit the number of items packages carried. Don't be a target by carrying 3 or 4 different packages that look interesting and may make you more of a risk. Only carry the amount of money really that you think is necessary for that particular outing, and minimize the use of credit cards that you take with you. One credit card. More than that, and you're victimized or you're held up or whatever, you're running the risk of identity theft and other malicious kinds of actions taken against you. Your phone should be charged. It should not be half charged. It should be fully charged. Keep it locked. You can easily get a panic button on the phone nowadays. Let people know where you are, like someone, family member, relative, friend, somebody. Hopefully, they're individuals. Even if you're isolated or you live alone, hopefully you can provide some information to somebody to know where you are, where you're going. Know the area and routes where you're going, and obstructions and closings. You may want to know that a particular street is closed, locked down, or that a particular church was closed during the snowstorm. One of my patients told me that the church closed. So for somebody to have gone there, obviously not knowing this, I'm not suggesting to necessarily put the person at risk, but it was something that person did not know, could have known by checking on the internet. Examine places you enter when you go in, malls, movie theaters, places where there's high volume of individuals, buildings, professional buildings when you're going for appointments, lighting and time of day. If it's if it's noon, you're likely to have fairly good lighting. It could be cloudy, raining, snowing, and miserable. Obviously, if it's later, you need to consider proper lighting. You don't want to go into a dark building and wait for the light to turn on. Location, public gatherings, what are peak times? You may be safer during peak times because there's a lot of other people there, as opposed to being more isolated and on your own. Look especially for parking garages in shopping malls. If you're in the fifth floor parking lot and your vehicle is one of three vehicles, you're all the way at the end, and it's like 9 p.m. when the mall is closing, and you're carrying packages, you are likely to be at greater risk than somebody else during more peak hours with a lot of cars closer to the elevator, well parked, and not having so many packages with you. Also consider your own physical abilities. If you walk with a cane, you need some sort of assistive device, you are also at greater risk of being targeted. We talked about that, about people who have disabling conditions being more targeted. So be aware of that and be safe. And be aware of the presence of law enforcement and others who can assist you. Trust your gut. If something doesn't seem right, do it. Abide by it. If the weather doesn't look good and you have to show up for physical therapy and it's beginning to snow, don't say to yourself, I can't miss my physical therapy. I'm going to try to squeeze it in. Hope it doesn't snow too much. Leave. Go back. Go back. Don't put yourself at risk for no reason at all. Puedes sacar slide. Lenny, anything to add to that? I think
Yes.
That's relevant to all of our viewers.
You're out on the island. I'm in the city. So when you come to the subway, make sure, number one, you don't stand at the edge of the platform. You stand against the wall if there's a wall or next to a pillar. Do not make yourself a target for someone to push you into the tracks. Also, depends on the time of day. If you can, try to get into the car with the conductor, the guy in charge of the doors. Stay there. Don't go into the last car where there's no one there. Don't look at people. I mean, actually, don't really look at people. I was a teenager. I looked at someone. They punched you right in the face on the A train. I didn't even not supposed to look at people. Don't stare them in the eye. Even if they look, don't be careful of your cell phone. I was in the train one night, midnight, when I travel a lot on the trains, and a guy's on his cell phone. The car stops, doors open. A guy runs in, grabs cell phone, and runs out, and doors closed. The guy had it down to a science, and we were always shocked. Like this guy would steal cell phones from the subway. So your things are good about malls. I'm talking about in the city. So those are the things I want to add.
No, but it's especially important what you mentioned, and thank you for doing so. In subways, don't be right at the edge of the train track, waiting for the train. Move away and be alert. Keep your eyes open. That's not the time to be texting, or to be on the phone, or to be reading a book, or listening to your music. You need to be alert and be aware of what's around you. That's a very good piece of advice. Oscar, por favor, slide 14. I'm putting up slide 14, which pertains to vehicular attacks more for information purposes. It's less likely that the viewers would be in some way victimized by this, but it does happen. We've had horrific incidents, and it's good to realize that. You need to be aware of, this, especially if there's going to be parades or holidays, you're out with a lot of people. You need to be aware of the roadway, the environmental design, whether there's speed bumps, markings, access to the particular road, lighting, barriers, concrete blocks, bollards, trees. What's there? What's there? There was a horrific vehicular incidents in Paris and in Barcelona, and not in Paris, in Nice, France. Barcelona and downtown near I think the West Side, with
West Side Highway, right? Not far from my union headquarters, right?
but it was horrible. People
Far down the West Side Highway, West Street.
So be aware of public gatherings, peak times. Always, key is always awareness, alert, observing. Know the area. This I've mentioned it before. Look at the routes. And be aware, rapid crisis intervention is, if something happens, there has to be an immediate intervention, because loss of life is so quick, so easy. So rapid crisis intervention for anybody, who's able to do that, anybody who's in a position of being able to render first aid. At a minimum, call, dial 911, call, make yourself available. Okay, so for the Sakala slide, anything to add to that, Lenny? I know there was more for information than I'm anticipating. Something.
You do a very good saying, when you're going someplace, know where you're going. You know what I do sometimes? I go to Google Maps, and you can click on either look at a graphic or look at the actual what it looks like. And I actually look at the street I'm going to if it's a new area. I look at the cross streets. I think Google Earth is shut down, but Google Maps, you can see the actual location where you're going and study it a little bit, and so when you come out of the subway, you know what to expect, where your target, where you're going to. You can do that. So
you can always Google street closings or safety measures or parade on such and such a day. There's always things that you can do. Gay Pride, for instance, requires a tremendous amount of supervision. And, we're talking at some of these huge mass gatherings, you're going to see mounted police. Why mounted police? Because they stand 10 feet up in the air. They have a wonderful, wonderful field of view, also in amusement parks, when there's gatherings there, you're going to see mounted police there. They're certainly going to be a lot quicker than cop cars, maneuvering and going from one place to another. And the mere presence of having mounted police is also something that helps to dissuade would-be attackers and terrorists. They see the surveillance. You have a combination of police officers who are plainclothes, on the lookout, aware of profiles, and you should have also a good mix of uniformed police and security as well. These are going to be the more obvious and visible sources of deterrence. Don Oscar, we're going to put up resources now before we close the program. Puede poner slide 15. So, as usual, I have my contact information on the left. My consultant, Dr. Peter Canaris, is on the right. Phone number that you have, fax, and you have my contact information on the left. I provided underneath a very important resource to the viewers. This is by the Centers for Disease Control. Here's a website. This covers a wonderful, wonderful compendium of violence prevention information that's so relevant. Different types of violence, different types of context, different kinds of victims. Go to it. It's wonderful. It'll provide you with a tremendous amount of resource and information, educational, for the viewers who are so inclined. New York State Psychological Association, I take pride in my involvement in them for so many years. And Lenny, we both, as mentioned, were presidents of New York State Psychological Association. I provided contact information and a website. There is so much that NISPA does. They have psychologists who post their information in case there's viewers who might want to reach out to a particular psychologist in a particular area who specializes in a particular kind of problem area and who accepts a particular kind of insurance that you, the viewer, would need. So there's informative information that's there. The website there's a lot of references and resources for non-NISPA members for the population at large. So I encourage you to go there. The American Psychological Association, I've mentioned this on many occasions before. This is the parent organization of all the states and all the regions. Every state, New Jersey has New Jersey Psychological Association, Connecticut, Texas, California. They all have their regional association under APA, and all you have to do is Google it. You want to Google California, just Google California Psychological Association. You'll see it there. Like NISPA, they also provide a wealth of information. So if you're in their area and you need contact information from them, go to them. The APA also has a lot of resources. They have stuff on protecting yourself from earthquakes, from hurricanes, from fires. So there's a lot of informative resources available with the APA. Lastly, Suffolk County Psychological Association. This is my region, and small but super powerful, and I'm very proud to be a member of them. They are it's my division, since I live in Suffolk, and I encourage you to go there. There's a trip, small as they are relative to NISPA and APA. It's amazing the kinds of things that they offer. Puedes sacar a slide, Lenny. I know that you belong to another region. Maybe you want to give a shout out to Manhattan Psychological Association.
Shout out to Manhattan Psychological Association. We're everything psychological in New York. That's us. We're Manhattan.
Okay.
If you're a psychologist, come join us. You're not a psychologist, become a psychologist and then join us.
Okay. If you go to NISPA, also you will see access and get access to the other regions like Brooklyn, Westchester. There are many other regions, and that would be of interest for you. So we've reached the end. So Oscar, algún saludo, Oscar? Do you have anything? All right, everybody, be careful because of the weather. Be careful how you drive, not to take too many risks when you're driving. He actually used a nice, colorful expression, which I will refrain from translating.
Roy, do you give Oscar free therapy? That's what I want to know.
Well, in exchange for pupusas, I probably would. Barter. Simply bartering. Lenny, it was a delight having you as a guest. Any 2-minute parting comments that you have for the viewers? Or about the show?
No, Roy. First of all, Roy, you've made me feel very comfortable. So I was somewhat nervous about being on here, and some of my staff might be watching, or whether they're not watching. My wife I don't know if she fell asleep or if she's still watching. Maybe she'll call me at the end. You did a great job, and I think it's a real service, really, to people to learn about whatever what's going on in the current events. You're teaching them something, and it's for free. It's fantastic. So you're a great talker. You're very special. So I want to thank you. And no, Roy did not pay me to say that. I really mean it. He's a fantastic guy.
Okay.
So,
thank you so much, Lenny. And to my viewers, I'm going to say farewell in a fairly typical manner. Please stay safe. Be aware of your own needs. Be aware, you certainly don't need to seek professional help every time there's an issue. There's many people, peers and others, and, clerical, religious personnel, friends who might be able to provide you some advice. But know when to seek professional advice when things are too overwhelming for you. And right now, with so much violence and aggression and acts of racism and directed to so many different types of groups of people that we're witnessing on a day-to-day basis, and the ravages of COVID that's still upon us, don't be shy. You know, if you need to contact something, do so. Be aware of your neighbors. Many of them may have handicapping conditions or have difficulty. I don't believe that I shared, but I will. I'm not embarrassed to do this. That I have mobility issues. I believe that I've shared that with my viewers. But I have problems because of arthritis with the right knee, right hip, and lower back. So for me, mobility is an issue, and I have to use the assistance of the cane. On December 31st, no less than New Year's Eve, 4 a.m, I went out of my house to throw the garbage. And I wanted to leave a little note on my mailbox for the mail person to come and knock on the door so that I could give them a little gift for the holidays. So I put some Post-its on it, and then I didn't realize it, and I misstepped. I missed the porch step. I misstepped and went down a step and did everything I could to try to hang on for dear life. And I fell between a decorative bird cage that we have there as decoration for years and the first step. And I landed squarely between both, landing on my elbow, sustained a 4-inch gash and a huge bump. And I'm telling you, I could not get up. I could not get up, and I was screaming like a fool, for help, for help, for help, 4 a.m, and it was wet. And I had these thoughts, it'll really be something if come the morning they find me out there, and I did not have the phone with me. So lesson learned. A neighbor came and helped me, and I was very grateful for it. But lesson learned, you need to be aware of people who are your neighbors and if they have limitations or not. Please have a phone with you whenever you go out. Have it charged. You shouldn't be separated from your phone. Your phone shouldn't be in the bathroom when you're in the kitchen or outdoors, Don't give your phone vacations. Make sure your phone's charged. Take care of yourselves. Take care of your community. Be on the lookout, for anything that's suspicious. I wish you all nothing but safety, good health. I hope that the show was of interest to you, and I encourage you to look at it and to take screenshots. Again, Oscar, muchas gracias. Lenny, it was great having you. To my viewers, un placer hacer la presentación, another pleasure for me. And I do hope that the next show I'll be able to put together something on children and COVID, and I will post ahead of time so you'll know when the next show is. So again, me despido de todos. Good night to everybody. Good night, Lenny. Good night, Oscar. And be safe. Thank you so much. Buenas noches. Good night.
Buenas noches. Good night, Astrid.